Okay, so welcome to the Balearic show. And what we're going to be looking at today is three presentations from three innovators, pioneers, thinkers of the superyacht sector. And the key subject today is big data, something which is going to have a very big impact on the industry in the future. And we're going to look at the three elements that bring big data together. So during that time, we're going to look at three presentations. One is going to be related to yacht predictive maintenance, AI, machine learning, which is going to be brought to us by one of my friends, Joseph Adair. Then we'll be speaking to Matt over at E3, who's going to be talking to us a little bit more about the innovations in connectivity and how they will impact this data which is transmitted from yachts. And finally, we're going to be speaking to Jens over at Cobham. Now, Jens is a bit of a legend in the industry, and he will be talking to us finally about LEO, which I know everyone's very excited about, the impact of LEO in the future, how that's going to be rolled out, the involvement of various different companies in quite a detailed presentation. Between each of those, we'll do a couple of questions. And then at the end, we're really going to have a look at how all of this unifies to bring together a more fluid experience for the owner and a more intelligent yacht. So the first person I want to hand over to is Joseph Adair. Now, Joseph is a tech pioneer. He's owned a number of tech companies. He's worked with everyone from governments right through to now wanting to work with us in the superyacht sector. I know he has some very strong views on what we should be doing as a sector and what artificial intelligence, machine learning can do. And I do tend to agree with him. So I'm going to hand over now to Joseph, who's going to give us a detailed presentation about the impact of machine learning and artificial intelligence on the future of superyachts. Over to you, Joseph.
Good morning, everyone. I think that Jack's presentation and opening remarks were quite kind. It's true, I'm coming with extensive background in the high-tech industry, been there for more than 20 years as technology entrepreneur, with vast experience. In the last few years, I made a shift into the whole AI space in parallel to my activity in the superyachting industry. And I found it quite astounding to realize the extent that the superyachting industry is behind the curve related to the evolution into Industry 4.0. We took initially an initiative about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, to be precise, when we started to develop the AI platform to be able to manage a very large capacity superyacht marine center branded Winter Haven. And that was actually my entry into the whole AI activity in the superyachting space. We did a very substantial development in order to be able to run the site, to do all the scheduling of assets, all the billing platforms, scheduling of subcontractors, allocation of assets, IoT devices and tracking of IoT devices. And then we realized that we're developing a platform that actually will be replicated maybe up to 3 times globally, and it doesn't make any sense. And we started to develop the platform for the other end of the spectrum, i.e. the superyacht. Our vision was to get to the day that the superyacht will come to our marine center, and actually long before the superyacht will be there through the satellite, we'll be getting all the data on anything and everything that needs to be done on this superyacht without any human intervention. To kind of materialize this dream, it's a long, long way to go. And where we focused our efforts as entry level is the predictive maintenance. What I would like to do is to go quickly through a presentation. It's a part of the presentation because we are limited in time, but I'll cover a few of the core elements and then we can talk about it further. Let me share the screen with you. Hopefully everybody can see it right now.
Not up at the moment.
No. something is wrong. 1 second. Pressing your screen. He doesn't share. If he doesn't share, okay, now
there we are. It's up.
Yeah, it's up. Thank you, and apologize. That's the Zoom features. Okay, so when we're looking at the whole ecosystem of the various stakeholders involved in a super yacht, we actually have three main stakeholders. It's the owners, the shipyards, and the captains, i.e. management companies. What we want to do is actually to offer each and one of them a true paradigm shift in the way that they look at the asset. From the owner perspective, we want to be able to introduce a TCO, total cost of ownership, which is a term that we can have an hour only discussing the whole TCO world. But this is something that we don't have today in the superyachting industry. We want to enhance the availability and the reliability, and obviously to improve the asset longevity. From the shipyard, at the moment, the shipyards do not have any big data to develop in-depth knowledge associated with the products that they're producing. And there must be a paradigm shift, and there must be a transformation of all shipyards into Industry 4.0, into big data, and into the infrastructure that will allow full digitization of the industry. They cannot offer extended warranties because they don't know how the future will look like. And they don't have real data depositories that they can truly mine and do deep mining in order to reach conclusions about the way that they're going to develop the product into the future. From the captain and the management company point of view, the key is obviously availability and predictability. You have a charter schedule, you need to be available for the charter. You have the owner coming, you need to be available. The last thing that you want to do is to do maintenance on something while you have the charter party or the owner on board. So the whole lack of ability to be predictable is really hurting. And very often there is a miscorrelation between the time slots and the tasks. And all the time it's kind of spinning around and trying to catch your own tail. And on the top of everything, the expectations of everybody is that this platform will be available for anyone and everyone that want to use it at any given point of time, which is not an easy target. What we want to deliver is a chain that will deliver value at the end of the day to anyone and everyone involved in the ecosystem. We want to deliver predictive maintenance. We want to deliver accurate diagnostic. We want to reduce the actual cost of ownership of super yachts. And we want to enable shipyards to go and to deliver extended warranty that will give new owners the peace of mind to step into yachting and to make the leap of faith and buy a new super yacht. Industry 4.0 and the whole digitization around it, and it's not for today to dive into the digital twins, but this whole space has been already fully implemented in so many industries, whether it's the power industry, whether it's the airline, the oil and gas, all the train, all the high-speed trains, all the high-capacity production lines. And even now, I guess people are not aware, but all the development of the vaccine for the coronavirus was done based on a digital twin technology. So it's a technology that actually everyone is entering into this space, and we are, I would say, one of the very few that left behind. I'm not going to devote now an hour about the core technology, but we have 4 pillars. Obviously, the first is all the collection of data based on IoT. The second major component is the predictive component, which is AI based. The third one is all the cybersecurity and the cloud integration. In cyber, I'm not talking only about external cyber, we're also talking about internal cyber against malware installed within all the hardware that has been delivered by various third parties. And the third one is the space of the digital twins and the virtual assistants, which will be the next generation moving into. I'll go briefly in 60 seconds on the system architecture. If we start from left to right, we're starting with a very large array of sensors and gateways that are interconnecting to these sensors, all connected via IoTs and different APIs into the existing controllers and PLCs and all the other monitoring devices supplied by the OEMs. Everything goes into, let's use the term middleware, or the term that we're using is glue logic, what actually glue together all the data streams and structure them into something which is, into a data stream which is transferable into the edge ML. The function of the edge machine learning is to be able to notify the chief engineer or the captain real time if there are any events that need immediate notifications and should not be processed offline and needs immediate reaction. We have the ability to run an edge ML. We have on-prem cloud, same as the edge ML, in order to be able to offer full service when the yacht is only available on low bandwidth via satellite. Cybersecurity and the thin skin of the digital twin, again, those are components that are very important for the whole picture, but we will not dive into them. Then we're connecting, and we need, I just want to make people aware of the amounts of data. If we're looking at the typical 50 to 60 meter super yacht, you're looking at about 3 to 3.5 terabyte of data per month coming out of the sensors and the monitoring system. We cannot transfer 3 to 4 terabyte of data over satellite yet. Obviously, the satellite operators will be delighted, but the cost will be a little bit high for the owner and for the management company. So therefore, we need the high bandwidth at a later stage when we're connected into the cloud via high-speed Wi-Fi or the LTE. Today we have the 5G coming into most locations around Europe. So we will be able to connect into the core AI/ML platform, into our cloud, and into the main digital twin database that will allow the deep learning into the process. As we're running out of time, we'll do it quickly. The process is actually running in data acquisition, aggregate, communicate, and analyze, where the data acquisition are all the end devices. We aggregate it through all the edge ML and all the machine learning on board. The security system protects us from any kinds of external or internal threats. And the digital twins allow us to perfect the prediction.
Can I ask, Joseph? Oh, sorry, one more slide there. Carry on.
Yeah. Predictive maintenance, just again, very quickly, predictive maintenance, what you want to do is just to avoid the reactive maintenance when an asset is failing. So you're trying to detect the beginning of the appearance of a fault at the very early stage. And if we look here, this is an example, and it's the easiest example to explain in a pump. You're getting a very specific sound, ultrasound signature at a very early stage that can be months before failure. So if we can decode this signature and to correlate the trajectory from an ultrasound indication to vibration indication into the issue of changing power consumption into noise, I can give the captain or the chief engineer an RUL, remaining usable life, i.e. you have another 4 weeks until the pump will be broken. So he knows exactly how much time he left to be able to address the issue. Final point is saving, because for everybody, the bottom line is very important. And these are numbers coming from all other industries that already implemented predictive maintenance. The saving is substantial. Normally, you can almost guarantee overall saving in the cost, in the total cost of ownership of about 15%, which is very substantial in the craft that we're talking about, looking at delivering saving to the owner.
Can I ask you, Joseph? You recently did a bit of a tour. You've been to see a few shipyards, I believe. And how do you feel the reaction has been to the industry? Is this going to come from shipyards? Is this going to come from brave owners, the type of owners like Paul Allen was, where they're willing to take, to adopt new technologies? Where do you see the change coming from?
I visited. I was brave enough during September and October to drive between 12 shipyards with the coronavirus hanging around. I can tell you that the reaction almost in any and every shipyard was very positive. Everybody is aware that they must go and implement this technology. It must be an OEM implementation. And we're aiming to work with the largest shipyards. I did some preliminary discussions before the coronavirus, the end of last year, with a few shipyards in the Netherlands. But at the moment, most of the shipyards we are working with are in Italy. And I'm hoping that by the end of December, we will announce already the alpha site and the beta site, the first two installations that will go into new super yachts that are being launched by April and by June next year.
That's very interesting. And I know, and again, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, but I know that you were also, not through Wintech, but through another part of the Win organization, if you like, developing potentially a marine center. Is that, wouldn't need to discuss that now. What I was looking at is your vision then to have a unified, say, for example, marine center and thinking super yacht, where you're able to have anticipate all of the problems you talked about in advance, bring the yacht in, and of course have everything prepared to resolve any of those issues.
This is exactly the goal. The goal is that we developed for almost three and a half years a lot of domain expertise, how to create a new asset class of a marine center. Not a marina, not a shipyard. This is not in competition with the refit shipyards, not in competition with the marinas. It's a completely different platform. We're looking now even to go and to license the domain expertise and the know-how to other regions in the world. There is a lot of interest coming now from the Middle East and from other parts of Florida. So people are realizing that the facility that will have very advanced technology and unique capabilities to go and to interconnect into the super yacht directly will be able to offer a completely different level of service.
So the benefits are obvious, the cost saving and the experience. I mean, so basically, super yacht industry, it's catch up or be left behind. Now, we do need to look, though, like you said earlier, the reality, the cost of transmission of data. And fortunately, we know that connectivity is also evolving. And we're going to go over to Matt Cross, one of the brains at E3. And we're going to hear a little bit from him about how this connectivity is actually evolving to deliver this data. Because obviously, if we don't receive the data, it cannot be analyzed. None of this is going to happen. So, Matt, tell us a bit more about how this connectivity, these evolutions in the technology are coming along.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jack. I think as a mindset, it's very interesting to hear Joseph talking about proactivity, which is something we've been pushing hard into decision makers for communication on yachts. Being proactive will always pay off down the line. The demand for bandwidth over the last 5 years has been significantly increasing. I would say exponentially increasing. One of the main challenge, I would say, for non-experts is the amount and the variety of technologies available in the market to actually provide that bandwidth to the boat. there is such a variety of possibilities that it's actually in the interest of the yacht owner or even end users on board to leverage the various technology to provide the maximum bandwidth available. Now, if we do a quick deep dive, I think 4G, as I would say, the most affordable technology, is being pushed more and more offshore. We've seen pointing antennas as a manufacturer and Peplink as a manufacturer bringing up new antennas type, new device type to eventually bundle some of the connectivity and push even more offshore the 4G signal, which of course from a commercial point of view is highly attractive, as well as from a technical point of view, the throughput achievable are nothing to compare to anything in the SATCOM world. The SATCOM, I would say, is fighting more and more. Even the low part of the data, the typical L-band customers, we've seen Iridium and Inmarsat fighting quite a lot for the maritime market share, and they are now bringing up to 700 kilobits per second to some of their customers, which is not that bad when you keep in mind the kind of low budget related to these solutions. They are more and more, I think, pushing hard to be part of the overall GNSS certification, which will help. But this is still low bandwidth compared to what we talked before on 4G. Now, I think within the SATCOM, if we look more accurately to the KU solution and the Ka-band solution, which are the most used, I think, the market is incredibly mature. It's all for the benefit of the end users. They get more and more bandwidth for their budget, which I think will continue. One of the key points from my view is to make sure to assess a relevant comparison between all the technologies on the market, depending on where you're going to go, how often you're going to use your communication. And as an example, what Joseph said, what do you need your communication for? If it's browsing Facebook, it's a whole different ballgame than implementing any type of proactive maintenance on board. The requirements are significantly different. But again, I think the maturity of this market is all for the advantage of the end user.
Would you say sorry.
Go ahead.
Would you say it's a blend of technologies that we're going to be looking at in the future, mixing 4G, 5G with Ka, Ku? Of course, we have the dual band dishes that came along, and we've now dispelled the myths about range share and things like that people used to talk about in those markets. Do you see ultimately it needs to be a blend of all of these technologies?
Absolutely. And I think ultimately it has to go beyond the modem. The IT developed on board of this yacht has to be a combination of product and services between what's been done on an NT point of view and a SATCOM point of view. A fantastic connectivity with the cerebral network on board could give the impression that the connectivity is wrong. So they have to go together. It's what we've been pushing to the market as a hybrid concept, which is basically leveraging the best technology depending on where you are, how often you need that, and what's your budget.
So when you say where you are, one of the things that I know is you're highly dependent on infrastructure on land. So to provide a unified experience for a yacht. So for example, if I go to Antigua, my understanding, the probability of them upgrading the infrastructure that's required for 5G on land might be a more distant prospect, than in the UK and in Europe. So is there going to be issues around a unified experience as you move around the world, or will you simply be switching technologies?
I think the switch is becoming more and more reality. Maintaining an IP session through different latency, for example, switching from 4G to satellite connectivity is becoming a reality. Now, the key point, I think, is that, as you said, 4G and whatever 5G will be available depending on the range offshore will always be considered as the best effort. And most of the yacht knows that, well, the bay around Monaco, around the Grand Prix, you're not going to get a huge amount of 4G connectivity. So SATCOM as a solution and as a market, I think will always be there, will always be on the background. And the evolution in that sector with the arrival of a potentially new product coming from these new orbits will benefit the customer. we just have to set realistic expectations. I think 2.5, 3 years is a realistic timeline, nothing before that.
So on that particular subject, because that's what we are looking at, 2024, somewhere thereabouts, I believe, I think we're going to have to go to Jens Ewerling, my apologies if my pronunciation was not particularly good there, and look at a presentation on one of the subjects we've covered enormous amounts on here is LEO, GEO, HEO, MEO, many words, which some technical people understand and some won't. And we want to know when is this arriving. And Jens, I'm going to give you one question even before we start that everyone asks me all the time, which I hope you will cover because it's for the real user on the end. If we get lots of faster data, will we just be spending more money, or we're actually going to look at some point at a reduction in costs? Because that comes across my news desk all the time.
Oh, does it? Well, I think it's. Let me dive into the subject, but it's a valid point. What we should be looking at is that let's say just take some average number. If somebody pays $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 today and gets maybe 6 or 10 megabit on an let's say ordinary VSAT connection, this will tenfold 20 times perhaps for the same kind of money. So it will become less expensive. You will get much more for your money in the future.
Great.
It's still satellite. So these constellations cost billions of dollars. So it's not that they can suddenly sell everything at half price, I'm afraid, but the technology will change a lot. And yeah, that's a good segue. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, let me dive into this right away. So I will be talking about a little bit about the orbit definitions just to bring everybody on board. There are some general advantages here and also disadvantages of, for example, LEO constellations. I will be looking at some of the deployment schedules and also reveal that there are actually quite a lot of companies. And then I will take you through some of the examples of these mega constellations coming up. And that will be both not only in LEO, but also in GEO, and they have different benefits. And I will look at that as well. Just to bring everybody on the same page, these are the 4 orbit definitions in SATCOM. There are some low Earth orbit projects in the pipeline. There's one that most of the maritime community know, which is Iridium. They're operating a LEO network for 25 years now. And we'll be talking more about that. But the obvious advantage here for a LEO network is the low latency, because that's pure physics. They're closer to Earth, and this means the round trip is shorter. Medium Earth orbit can be very interesting, and we'll come back to that for one specific constellation, because they have a lot of flexibility there. There are more projects coming in MEO. There's one example, which is SES's mPOWER 03B that currently only addresses the very large cruise liners. We will see there are some developments there. And then, of course, the majority of the, actually not quite correct, since Starlink SpaceX's network is more than 800 satellites now. There's not just the GEO satellites that is the largest constellations on Earth. It's actually now Starlink, but there's no maritime play there. And then, of course, as something new, the high elliptical orbit, we see an increased every year, just a little bit. We see the frequency increasing for people asking about connectivity in the Arctic and Antarctic, and this will be covered by the HEOs. Also, to preempt the LEOs, and this is a direct transition into the low Earth orbit. This is a visualization of how that works. So it's quite a complex affair for an antenna. For L-band, it's a lot easier. It's a more robust signal being in L-band. So when this happens in KU or KA band, this is quite a different task to make this happen. There's a lot of advantages here, of course, with the lower path losses, lower latencies, a lot of spectrum reuse. In most cases, a true global coverage. Some have not opted into the global coverage, even for LEOs, when it comes to Amazon Kuiper or Starlink. So, but others will. I will come back to that. But of course, and this is what we are monitoring as the world's leading hardware maker for maritime, we have to look very, very carefully who is going to make it into this. So we're constantly monitoring the news, and also we have, in most cases, direct connections into these projects, into these companies, to see how far they are getting this and how far they're going to make it. A quick look at the deployment schedule, just to show how much is going to happen over the next couple of years. And this is not, I won't go through this in detail, but you can see there's a lot of stuff happening, and we keep track on this on a constant basis, monitoring when all these satellites are going to be launched, just to be sure that we at the given time have the right antenna systems and user terminals available. Then, of course, this is just the collection of mega constellations out there, both in LEO, MEO, and HEO, and constellations. But it's just for us to say we've been dealing with these constellations for more than 20 years. We've built large antennas for Earth observation and weather satellites, and have built the satellite phones for all these years. So we know MEO, LEO very, very well, and this is what we're going to build on. One of the first mega constellation, we cannot omit that, even that there are LEOs offering certain advantages for sure. I will come back to that. But some of the mega constellation, like for example, Inmarsat's Global Express, who will launch these satellites in 22 and 23, actually with the loop in the middle there, the GX10A and B, the two satellites covering high elliptical orbit, that will give GX service in the Arctic. That is Inmarsat's play. That's for in-flight connectivity in aircraft, and that's also for maritime. So this is what that is for. And then a year later in 2023, we will see the GX789 coming online, which offer a lot of capacity and of course a lot of new connectivity possibilities to that much more flexible way to handle bandwidth and so forth. But that's up to Inmarsat. We just make sure that we have the right hardware available there. The next contender here in the same space, essentially in-flight connectivity and maritime on global Ka band, is Viasat. Viasat, a company out of California, is going to offer high-speed connectivity on 3 GEO satellites by 2023. And that's exciting because basically, as the CEO, Mark Dankworth, has said, that one of these satellites will have more capacity than all other data satellites on Earth combined. So these are massive satellites with a lot of capacity, and they will be offering a huge amount of bandwidth. They have founded the new Global Mobile Solutions Group, which will support this, and we're seeing hirings there. So the group is populated, and there will be a lot more connectivity and activity coming out of Viasat. And this illustrates kind of what we do, right? We have a year ago in Fort Lauderdale launched our 1 meter and 60 centimeter antennas, and on the same type of antennas in North America, we can offer, instead of just 2 or 4 or 10 megabit, we can offer 25, 50, up to 100 megabit on Viasat 2 already. So in Viasat 3 will even augment that. So there's a huge potential there. On the top end of the market, we believe one of the contenders for the future will be SES, but that's really, we're looking at the high-end cruise ship segment and the offshore the offshore platforms who need these very low latency and very high-speed data. That's something that the drawback here, because of the technology, you really need 2 large antennas, preferably 2 2.4 meters, better 3 2.4 meters antenna per installation. So it's quite a installation there, but the benefits are massive bandwidth and of course very low latency. Another interesting contender here, and I have some news there, of course, is that this is a special application with a company called Kepler Communications out of Toronto in Canada. And they have tiny nano satellites the size of a refrigerator zipping around Earth. And back in August, we could demonstrate 130, 150 megabit on a small 60 centimeter antenna. And that even was a total surprise to us, what could come through a small antenna with a low power amplifier and on a tiny little satellite. So this is, it's not your usual always on connectivity, but Kepler in the first phase, they are offering downloads or uploads of very large amounts of data, and this is what this is for. So the audience for that is exploration vessels, it's research vessels and the like. We don't have constant coverage right now. That will improve next year, but it's a very special application. And this is one of the applications, for example, which we did with Kepler with a modified 2.4 meter antenna connecting to these nano satellites. And that's a very interesting for special applications. They have more passes a day on high latitudes, so it's clearly right now it's aimed for Arctic exploration and research. A more viable contender for the maritime space is certainly Telesat, and Telesat is a known figure in our world maritime VSAT. They already have customers in Ku-band VSAT within their constellation coverage area, but they are preparing for the launch of a LEO network, and they're going to announce by the end of December. They're going to announce the funding and the plans and how they're going to deploy this. So it's all happening right now, and we are confident that the Telesat LEO network will be available by the end of 2023 at the latest. Right, so what are the benefits then compared to what we have today? So we're looking at a lot more bandwidth, similar type of antennas. We've spoken to all of them, and basically for a while there was different antenna considerations, but we are now back to the parabolic antennas because the reliability is very high and the performance is very, very high to other types of antennas. So parabolic antennas in the shape and form you know today will be able to offer a lot more bandwidth compared to what what you see today. And that's back to Matt's argument there. Where will this go? A similar type of 1 meter antenna, 65 centimeter antenna will be able to offer 50 megabit on an ongoing basis on these new mega constellations. So it will change the industry for sure. So for us, this is probably the most exciting time we've ever seen in the entire history of satellite communication, what will come online in the next 3 or 4 years.
It seems like to me there's also like a solution available for each type of yachts. We have sailing yachts, we have explorer yachts, sort of hugely growing markets. And of course we have the standard enjoyment yacht, let's say, who might in the future want to stream movies and that type of thing. So with all these different networks, they'll be able to cater to each segment of the super yacht sector.
Absolutely, that's a very good point. Rather than things becoming more standardized, there will be a lot more choice for each and every applications for each and every segment. And so this is we haven't made these mapping to the segments, but what we have certainly done is that is on my table, of course, is creating the roadmap for the future. So what are we betting on? And this is constantly reviewed actually every month. But the most likely to succeed, kind of like a yearbook statement, so to speak, is what we believe is Inmarsat, Viasat, Telesat, and SES, and then your smaller constellations like Kepler with specialized ways how to manage broadband, and even Kepler will have a second phase if they're going to make it after 2023, where they are going to offer high-speed Ka-band for the Arctic and so forth. So there's a lot going on, and we will certainly revise this on an ongoing basis. But that's our current view of the situation.
Can I ask something which, me as a layman, I'm kind of looking at where the market's coming from, and gentlemen, feel free to step in on more of a kind of an open basis on this as well. I mean, we've seen a number of companies, for example, OneWeb, that have had some issues filing for Chapter 11. Are these networks or parts of these networks? If you have, for example, Starlight and Elon Musk, and then on one hand you have OneWeb launching LEO satellites, they're effectively, is this one unified network, or are they competing with each other? And how will this affect the consumer?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to report back to you that they're all proprietary.
Right.
And that is, they're all looking after themselves. There are different developments. Everybody's is developing, designing the entire food chain just for themselves.
But I suppose then it's again where Matt was. We have companies like E3 that offer these hybrid solutions. They won't just be switching between technologies. They will be switching between companies, I'm assuming then, if that's possible.
Yes, it's possible. Yeah, with the latest software-defined WAN interfaces and network switching, like this is what's going to happen. Yeah, for sure. Because what we can see is there are no forces in the satellite industry that says, okay, now let's do this all together. Let's create one Ka-band standard or something, and then we all use it, because they're all just looking after themselves. We are kind of in a spot there where we could do something there, but the readiness from the satellite people is not really there. They are just looking after themselves, and everybody has their own business case, and it's a tough thing to do for sure.
It can also drive innovation, competition. So I suppose there's the flip side, there? It's
oh God, yes. It's, for example, the Viasat story is a brilliant story, since the Viasat 2 system, which we've launched. This is the wildest dream of any VSAT engineer. This thing where you just switch it on and it just goes on the satellite. There's nothing to calibrate. There's nothing to do. And they are in that sort of RF antenna satellite food chain. They are years ahead compared to anyone else. So it's, and that's based on competition, because they have clearly leapfrogged the entire industry by years, by saying, well, whatever there is there, it's just not good enough. We want to already, when we get on the market in 2019, we want to be way ahead. And that's, without the competition from,
it could be worse. It could be run by governments, and then
Yes.
But I think fortunately they compete. This is what's driven the innovation, and that's what will down the line beneficiate the end user.
Yes.
The throughputs available is still, I think, is still unclear whether end users will end up getting more throughput with unlimited volume as a transition. It's still unclear. There is still, like I said, a good 2.5 years. However, I think the main key point, which is going to change the end user market as a perception, if you're a yacht and if you're chartering your yacht, if you're out there at sea and they have a 10 megabits per second link, they should think, wow, my connection is fantastic. Well, if you're on satellite, you're still, as of today, you're still going to face half a second best case latency. And most of the people that are end users chartering a yacht for a week, they have no clue what's the latency for. And that's, from my view, changing orbit, what will drastically change the end user perception as far as how they feel about browsing internet, browsing Facebook.
It's bringing the experience they have on land simply into yachts. This is an expectation. If you're just Jay-Z or whoever, you don't necessarily know about this. I'm not saying particularly him, but any pop star, you're going to walk on board and expect the same experience. And all of the rest of the stuff, frankly, is just background noise to them. So I guess that's kind of where it comes from. However, we do look also at, going back to Joseph with data, the impact is more profound than I think that people realize. I mean, I met a bunch of people from big insurance companies and, Lloyd's and people like that in London. The fact is, cybersecurity in our industry, people were, maybe a few solutions now, but were very much unwilling to insure our industry for one simple reason. They all gave me the same reason: data. And if there's no data, an industry is immature. It's not a viable industry to look at investing in as providing even these solutions. So, Joseph, do you think, because you have to find low cost ways to get this data off, is there enough out there for you to get this data in the form you want to into on lands?
I think that this presentation is giving me a good level of optimism that by the time that we will have the AI platforms seriously deployed into our industry, which in my view it would be between 22 to 25, the availability of all the new constellations will be at a level that hopefully they will start to offer an asymmetric rates whereby at the time when there is a low utilization of the bandwidth, the constellation will be able to stream bigger quantities of data for lower rates, same as it done by utilities everywhere in the world. A satellite is a utility, and they must have an asymmetric rates. I guess it will come once there will be a big competition up there in the sky. But we need the high bandwidth, and if I was talking about multiple terabytes per month per super yacht, it's a lot of data, and still I don't think
the terabyte super yacht. Does anyone have a date when we haven't seen the first gigabyte, I don't believe, but anyone have a date when they might think?
That's Jack. It's terabyte 3.5 to 4 per month. It's not a stream. It's an aggregate of data accumulated over 30 days period. So you can stream it in batches when you have a lower rate available, let's say between 2 and 4 a.m. in the morning.
Not only that, but I believe when you're close to land, you could also pull this data off in massive amounts when you're closer to land.
Yeah, you connect to the 5G, or you reach your destination, you connect directly to a fiber or to a Wi-Fi. There will be multiple opportunities to be able to download the data, because we need the data. We didn't get to the point, because machine learning is all about the data. So you need a lot of data all the time to go through data pre-processing, the training model, the model testing validation, then to deploy, and then again to monitor. So it's kind of a circle that goes on and on. And you're improving the learning as time goes by and as more data is being accumulated. So
I think that's the very definition of artificial intelligence, isn't it? Self-learning.
Yeah.
In terms of for us. So what it seems like to me is we have 3 companies that are really part of this unification. I mean, possibly the only thing we're missing is maybe the people from represent the satellite side of things. So we need this network of satellites. Then we need companies like Cobham to deliver the hardware to be able to obviously distribute this information. We need people like Joseph to gather this information and process it and make it intelligent and make it thinking on there. And of course, we need companies like E3 who are able to go out, reach out to companies, to different networks, all these competing technologies, and unify them in a hybrid way. And really, I think all of those together today, everyone who's here, provides one larger solution. And on that, I wanted to thank E3 for putting together this presentation. And if any of you are missing Eric, by the way, he's over at Cobham, if you didn't know now. So you can see him there if you miss our Dutch friend. I believe there's like a final part here, Jens, you wanted to just look at. So I'll pass back over to you.
Thank you. Well, just to round this off, there is, of course, with the evolution of these networks, there is a bit of an evolution with the antennas as well. And I have a big point to make on top of what Joseph has mentioned there, is that we have embarked on a monitoring of our antennas. So we already have a system in place based on a Microsoft Azure cloud solutions where we already monitor 300 antennas. On big cargo vessels, an entire fleet of ships. And we're getting antenna data into our own cloud. And we will expand this platform going into make this available to all our customers essentially next year.
Would you see yourself, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, where we see ourselves is that we are taking our part of this Internet of Things responsibility, so to speak, right? We do realize is that once broadband becomes so important, so mission critical, that we know that the antenna, satellite antenna, yes, you may argue there is going to be a mix of networks and terrestrial and so forth, but we were going to take our part of the responsibility and say we want to keep this alive and we want to be part of the monitoring even before there might be a service case. We already know what the antenna is doing because it feeds into our own database. And that is an evolution we are doing in us preparing for the future, that an antenna is a device, a high-tech system, which is high-tech level. We have sensors for so many things, is that we can pull data out of the antenna, which none of the other marine electronics hardware makers have and don't have to have, but we have them in our antennas, and this is what we are going to enable in the future.
So I'm assuming that more companies now will be expecting to put sensors into technology, which is going to feed into what Joseph's trying to achieve. You'll have outputs that other organizations like his will be able to take.
Yes, yeah, and we start collecting this on our own cloud, but we're going to make APIs available to those who are interested in getting the data from these antennas. So this is all preparing for the future, and that's going to happen. But more on the antenna side, back to the satellite constellations, of course, is that there will be more redundancy with these constellations, even on the geostationary orbits, but also on the non-geostationary orbits in LEO and MEO. So what this is trying to illustrate is that LEO and MEO require 2, perhaps 3 antennas for full redundancy. And then in the longer term, we are looking at electronically steerable antennas. Of course, that's years ahead. But for the time being, this will be the same type of parabolic antennas, what the industry already knows.
So, gentlemen, I think for today, we're running out of time. And I want to thank E3 again for bringing this together. And of course, the Balearics virtual show. And if you have any questions for any of these individuals that you can see it, for Matt, for Joseph, for Jens, then they are going to be available to be answering your questions live. So don't be afraid to put difficult questions to them. Reach out to our friends, ETO, shipyards. We'd like to know more about this technology. Get in contact with them during this live event. And thank you for joining us today for the Balearic virtual show.